and welcome to Mime Radio. I'm Karen Hoyer.
And I'm James Donlin. We're your hosts. And I'd like to introduce Mike Diaz, our glue man, the man in the booth. Where are you, Mike? There he is. You can see he has only one pair of headphones on now, but his twitching fingers and savory ear saves us in the world of the digital performance.
Mike, so James,
yes.
Who's our guest today?
Well, we have Karen Montanaro, and I'm really excited about this, as I know you are. She's a force of nature, a very wise woman who's been working in physical theater for her whole life, basically. Let me read you something about her to inform our listeners and viewers. So Karen Montanaro, the day after she graduated from high school, Karen took a bus to New York City to study ballet at the Joffrey Ballet School. A year later, she signed her first contract as a professional ballet dancer with the Ohio Ballet and later with the Darmstadt Opera Ballet in Germany. Her career as a ballet dancer was an emotional roller coaster. The highs were very high and the lows were increasingly dreadful. After a 10-year career, which I'm really impressed by, Karen decided to apply to medical schools and find a cure for AIDS, which I'm even more impressed by. Before she could take that step, she attended a performance by Master Mime, Tony Montanaro. This performance touched Karen so deeply that even now, 30 years later, she continues to learn new things about what happened to her that day. Eventually, Tony and Karen were married and started performing and teaching together. Tony died in 2002. Karen continues his legacy as a mime and performer, but also as a teacher and truth seeker. So we're very happy to welcome Karen Montanaro to the Mime Radio Show. And there she is.
Hello, Karen. I'm so glad that you're with us. And as a fellow Karen, I am very proud to know you.
Likewise, Karen.
Let's start with our favorite question, James.
That's a good idea.
So we like to ask our guests, what is the one thing that you think of right before you go on stage? Whether that's for a performance or a lecture or a demonstration or teaching, what goes through your head right before you go on?
Usually I really can't wait to get out there. And it's a sense of extreme excitement.
Do you peek at the audience? Are you one of those?
Oh, yeah.
And do you get information from that about that audience? Or do you just as a kind of an energy hit, do you take it that way?
Yeah, I think I scan the audience, absorbing stuff that my intellectual, rational mind can't quite understand. But I'll look and I'll see, oh, that person might be a little bit harder to reach, or that person is really ready to laugh.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting because in physical theater, which we're all practitioners of, there is no fourth wall. I mean, you may not actually look at the audience during your pieces, but you know they're there. And of course, in clowning and areas of mime, you actually encounter the audience, could even touch them actually, or get them on stage. So this ability to be concerned with the audience, or this need to know who they are, I think is really important for the physical theater artist. It doesn't surprise me that you peak, because I peak too.
Karen, was that different when you were a ballet dancer?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was completely different. And in a lot of ways, I think meeting Tony and getting into his world was a polar opposite experience from everything that I had encountered as a ballet dancer. And one of them obviously was this relationship to the audience. In the ballet world, the unspoken and a downside of it is that you're there to impress the audience. Mm. I don't think directors and choreographers would really say that, but as a rigorously trained ballet dancer, we didn't even think about it. We were always trying to impress each other and trying to show the audience what we could do, and it became, the tricks started to be really important. Like, how many pirouettes can you do? How high can you get your leg? How wide can you spread your legs when you jump? How long can you balance? And this was, I didn't think about my audience at all, except, oh, I better impress them.
Yeah, I look at it as almost, I mean, having been around a lot of dance myself, is especially in ballet, that you're almost like a jewel under the counter, and the audience is like a couple looking for their wedding ring. And what's impressing me? Oh, I can't touch it, but it's there. It's beautiful. And maybe backstage, or he'll open the countertop and they'll take the ring out and show us. That seems like a real parallel, metaphor in some ways.
Interestingly, I had a conversation with Isabel Fokine. She was the daughter of Michael Fokine, Vitaly Fokine, who they were like the primitive pioneers of ballet.
Mm-hmm.
And in the early days of ballet, we the dancer was supposed to wear jewelry. We were like the original commercial. You know, you'd get into these point shoes and your tiaras, but the main thing was that you were showcasing jewelry, and you'd flit around a little bit, and then everything would stop, and you'd come forward and you'd show the audience your jewelry.
Where these people you mentioned, where did they come from? What the
Russia.
Russia, right?
Yeah, they're part of the Vislav Nijinsky era.
I see.
And the Diaghilev, and yeah.
Yeah, my background is almost exclusively in contemporary dance, so my
Yeah.
ballet history is a little sketchy, But.
Karen, did you start off as a baby bal? Were you right from the very beginning studying ballet very, very young?
Well, yes and no. But my parents signed me up because they wanted to give their daughters all these, opportunities. So I took ballet dutifully, started when I was 8, hated it. Hated it. I hated ballet because it was so boring. And in fact, I have a whole story about that my ballet experience, which really set me up for Tony. Mm-hmm. But as an 8-year-old ballet dancer, you go dutifully once a week, and we started to learn how to waltz. And waltz. Second, boring. I wanted to quit in the middle of the year. And then, my mother would say, "No, Karen, you can't quit. You've committed to the year. You can quit in the spring." It was really hard because I started to take ballet on Saturday when all of my friends and my sisters were watching cartoons. But what happened in the spring was that we had this recital, and there were tutus, and there was tiaras, and there was flowers. This is the mime. We were characters, and we get out there, but the main thing was that there was fear. It took me a long time to realize how important that fear was, because I would be deathly afraid before going out on stage. And then as soon as my dance was over, I was elated, and I've tried to dissect that experience, and I realized it was the fear of revealing myself.
Wow.
And it wasn't a fear, obviously, it wasn't a fear that I was going to hurt myself, but it was a fear of revealing myself. And when I confronted that fear and got through it, I experienced something so much more rewarding than watching cartoons. And by the time I met Tony, I had started to use ballet as another hiding place. I didn't know that, but ballet started to be the way I felt relevant, the way I felt valuable, the way I felt good about myself.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So now this audience, like I'm thinking that revealing yourself to the audience or sharing this private side, like, who is that audience to you? Like, maybe what was that audience when you were a ballet dancer, and then how did that audience come to be in your mind when you were doing more mime and or exclusively mime? Like,
Well,
how do you perceive them?
so the audience, and granted, I was 8 years old, 9, 10, 11. I couldn't have answered that question then. But on hindsight, I realized the audience was extremely threatening to me. And I think a lot of young people automatically feel threatened by that kind of exposure, to actually perform in front of people who don't know you.
Mhm.
And it's, again, I think it's the self and the other, that that is such an important relationship. I think this whole life is about who is self and who is other.
Yeah.
But for this young 8-year-old, 9, 10, 11, even as a ballet dancer, the audience was a scary, very hypercritical um, testing ground. When I started to work with Tony, there was a tremendous learning curve because here I was standing on stage with this master mime who really had a very illustrious career before he teamed up with this, whippersnapper ballet dancer. I was 27, he was 60. There was a 34-year age difference. And he would get out on stage and the audience fell in love.
Mhm.
I could feel their love for this man. And I could understand it because he was funny. He was spontaneous. He developed instantly a relationship with the audience that I did not have. I was still programmed, the cultural continuum of all these preconceived ideas. I was still programmed to find the audience somebody that I had to ingratiate myself to with my technique.
There's that piece I've seen on video of you that I forget the title. It's the one where you're on a stool most of the time, and it's mostly there's footwork and there's floating kind of sense. What's the title of that piece I'm thinking of?
Wonderful World.
Yeah. So to me, that's a wonderful. It's a beautiful mix of that ballet structure and beauty, ethereal side, and then there's the mime and the clown starts to enter in, because that piece you really do connect with the audience. So it's so interesting how that, which is a piece you did later in your career as a performer, right? But that piece, I think, really shows how you evolved from this frightening kind of environment into this sort of swimming pool of like languid, nice water, that you could enjoy, right?
Yeah, and there's a story about that that pertains to this, shift of my relationship with what I do and my relationship with my audience. I was getting ready to go to the Celebration Barn, which is an international school of mime. Primarily, it started as a mime school that my late husband founded in the early 70s. It's still a thriving school, but they have teachers of all different disciplines coming in there. But anyway, there was a residency, a directing residency, and my director was going to be there, Robert Post, who studied with Tony also, and he's a phenomenal mime. And Robert and I had worked really well together, but I had decided in this 2-week residency, I was going to work on a point piece. Get up on these point shoes. I'm already too old as a ballet dancer to be wearing point shoes, but I have
by the way, what's the age? What's the
What's
retirement age from the point shoes, generally speaking, for a ballet
Well,
dancer?
I was wearing them until I was 41,
Wow.
but
wow,
I had quit. I had quit the professional dance world when I was 27, which is, kind of a standard time when dancers will quit, this profession that they've trained their whole life for, and they usually don't have any other, training, no other schooling, no college education.
It's like tunnel vision. Yeah.
So, Karen, I want you to finish the story about you working on this piece.
Yeah. So I got up. I was very ambitious. I'm going to work on this mime dance that is at my epic, my biggest piece, and I'm going to work like a dog. And I'm going to put my point shoes on. And I schlepped up my marley floor because the barn doesn't have marley. You know, marley is a special dance surface for point work. Schlepped it up to the third floor, put it all down, went out to take my sleeping bag into the, you know, place where you sleep. And I stepped off a step like this big, and my foot like crumbled underneath me. I mean, there was no way that I should have had that kind of a accident going off this little tiny step.
Yeah.
I panicked. You know, this was like a flashback because toward the end of my ballet career, I was plagued with injuries. So here, all of a sudden, I had this wonderful opportunity to work. You know, like I was addicted to that kind of work. Boom, clump, clump, clump. I get up and I'm hobbling. I can't, you know. I go to Robert and I say, Robert, I can't do anything. And he said, if you go home, I'm going to go home. You have to stay here. and all right, so I hobbled up to the third floor, you know, and here's my marley floor. Obviously, I can't even stand on my foot, you know. And I reached into my bag, my ballet bag, and I pulled out this CD of music that I have loved forever. And I've tried to choreograph something to it. You know, it is that music, The Wonderful World by Israel Kamakawiwo Ole. Izzy, they call him Izzy.
Yeah.
So I put it in, and I found a little stool. I saw this stool there. It was already there, you know, and I sat on this stool and I thought, you know, going back into my metaphysical, analytical hunger for what do I need to know now? The thought came, instead of thinking about what you need that you don't have, think about what you have that you're not using.
Mm.
Uh-huh.
That's when I reached into the bag, you know, if I'm going to be chronologically correct. I reached into the bag. Here was the CD, put it into the music, got the stool, sat on the stool. There was just happened to be a little mirror that I looked at. And I started the toe going out.
Yeah.
Out. A goosebumps rushed all over my body. I have a piece. That one move, I knew I was in the groove. That piece was choreographed in 2 days.
Yeah, I believe it.
Lovely.
So you said something, you know, I haven't used what I have. Is that what you said?
Yeah, instead of thinking
so the mime is the turning into the mime world is starting to bring these parts of you forward that you had repressed or hadn't even discovered or were lost in you. And it was a wonderful revelation, correct? Yeah.
And
Karen, won't you please tell us the story about how you met Tony? Because I just that is one that you've told me already, but I just love it, and it's such a beautiful transition for you.
Yes. So by the time I met Tony, I met Tony during a rehearsal for the Nutcracker Ballet. I had quit my professional job and I was getting ready to enroll in medical school, but the local company called and asked me to do the lead in their production of the Nutcracker. They just so happened to have hired Tony to be Drosselmeyer, which is the character role in the first act, hoping that he would be a box office draw because in Maine, he was really like an icon. Mm-hmm. So here I go, okay, I'll do this piece, but I really don't want to do ballet anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Because ballet, by then I was messed up. I mean, seriously messed up by the dance world, which means that I was having anxiety attacks. I was depressed. I was very weird about eating. I know at some point I would have been diagnosed with anorexia. Mm-hmm. And I would have more and more mornings where I just did not want to get up out of bed. So to throw my legs over the side of the bed was a supreme act of courage. And I had no idea what was wrong with me. In fact, I even thought this was normal. in some way this was normal. A lot of my friends were taking Prozac or whatever the thing was. So I thought, all right, well, this is life. So one day, out of a sense of obligation, I go to see Tony's show, his solo show. Here's this fellow cast member. You want to be supportive. So I'm going to go to Tony's show. I sit in this little tiny theater. There might have been 70 seats. And here I am, a 27-year-old ballet dancer, and dutifully going to another show. And Tony comes out on stage. So he's 60 years old. He's going through a divorce. He's not happy with his life. He's overweight, and he's wearing spandex. It is just not a good look. Not only that, you could see his jockstrap through his pants. It was cutting through his pants, and he was growing his hair long. And it was in a ponytail. But when he started to move, I did not see any of that. I was utterly transformed from the minute he started being himself. The minute he started opening his mouth, and really the most important thing was how he moved. I sat there feeling a bubble of glee, coming from the middle of my bones. I mean, I sat there and I thought, this is the middle of my bones. There are pink champagne bubbles rising out of the middle of my bones. And there was a specific moment when he played the fat cowboy. This was the moment where I started to come back to life. He was the fat cowboy. He stuck his belly way out, and he was overweight anyway. So when you stick your belly out, it really pokes out. and he's, and I'm not, here I am, a ballet dancer. I'm not trained to watch linear stories when I watch a performance, and here this guy is moving. So there was a story, but I was just watching movement, and I was watching character. Mm-hmm. And at one point, this fat cowboy, and he's, kind of showing the stupid young cowboy who thinks he's going to have a showdown. And the fat cowboy, all right, here I go. I'm going to show this whippersnapper, thing or two. And he whips his guns out of his pocket. And he does it in mime, so he slaps his hips, and instantly his hands go into the gesture of guns. And I remember thinking, this is the best thing I ever saw. And then he does all these tricks with the guns, and he's just moving his hands around it. But I see guns, and I see tricks. And he takes these guns and he throws them up in the air. He waits for the guns to come down, and then the guns land in his holsters. Boom, boom. I consider that moment to have been my okay, Karen, this is the way to come back to life. I went up to him after the show and I said, Tony, I have to know what you're doing. Somehow I knew that whatever Tony had to teach me was the way out of my extreme neurotic hatred of myself.
That's amazing.
Then what happened next? What happened next?
So the next thing that happened, so here's my radar bleeps on this one moment, right? Okay, I say, Tony, I have to know what you're doing. So a week later, I have a chance. We're in his living room and just talking, we're on the couch, and I said, okay, Tony, teach me something. This is desperate. I'm talking desperate here. He says, okay, get up. I got up, and he says, do a move. Do a move? In the back of my head, I'm thinking, do a move? You're talking to a professional ballet dancer? I have a daunting movement vocabulary. whip off sometimes 5 pirouettes. My leg could go up the side of my body. I could leap so that my crotch was lower than my legs. And I knew, again, here's where the knowledge is somewhere deeply buried in the center of our life. I knew that none of those moves could help me at this moment.
Mm.
I knew that I had to let a movement rise up from the unexplored, unpredictable, unfamiliar side of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And a move that only I could do right then and there. And I panicked. This was the anxiety. This was the source of my anxiety that I was carrying around since I was 19, a professional ballet dancer. This fear of my own originality. I was afraid of looking stupid.
Mm.
And at that moment, again, as clearly as those pink champagne pain bubbles came up out of my bones, I saw the no voice pressing down. I experienced the no voice pressing down on me. And it said, Karen, don't move. Don't move. You're going to look stupid. You're going to regret it. Just do a pirouette and get it over with. All he asked was for you to do a move. And the yes voice was coming up from the bottom of my soul, like hot lava coming through ledge. And it said, come on, Karen, you can do this. Your life depends on it. Come on,
Wow.
come on. And I let the yes voice gather momentum and energy. And unbeknownst to myself, I did this move that I know I'm on radio. I can't show it, but my hands just started to move in this wild way.
Show us. I think people can hear the air move. Show us the move.
Okay, all right. So so my hands just started to go like an oscillating thing, palm to palm. I bent my knees, went down to the floor.
Yeah.
Still doing this crazy, stupid arm movement. My hands are splayed like I never do in ballet, and my shoulders are up to my ears. My knees are bent. I'm turned in, God forbid. And I get up. All right, so that move took all of 5 seconds, right? I get up. My face I am burning with embarrassment. My face is as red, it's just inflamed. And I grab Tony. I grab him so he can't look at my face. Wow. And I said, Tony, I've forgotten how to play. And that was all I knew at that moment. And that was my first mime class with Tony. And I could not have done one more second longer than that. I was completely undone.
What a story.
Yeah.
Wow.
I feel like all the parts exploded and floated. I was dissolved.
Wow. So you made this step, you made this journey that little by little you went down these passageways and you went around the corner and you found different ways of working and so forth. How what you do now, how would you define what you do now? Is it possible to define your art, which is this combination of the background of the ballet and the master mime and anything else that you throw in there? Because I know you're also a philosopher, I would say. You're interested in the metaphysical and where the truth lies. So how would you define your art? Is it possible?
Well, the reason Tony and I eventually got married and had the most profound and deep relationship was because we are truth seekers. So, for example, you could read in a book something that really, sounds right to you. But there's also this time, like when I saw Tony perform for the first time, I knew that that was my truth, that I had tapped into my truth. And he was a catalyst putting me in touch with that. And so right off the bat, now Tony proposed the second time we were ever in the same room. I mean, he proposed like that.
Wow.
And
that was his move.
That was his move, right?
That was his move.
That was his move. And we were, I was looking for a way out of, deep, dark depression, excessive misery, and he was looking for a wife, and I was not looking for a husband at all, especially not a 60-year-old overweight mime.
Wow. I
But
can see it now. Yeah.
but I loved our conversation. He would propose every time we were together. We would have these great conversations, and then always, we really should get married, and it was a very. I mean, I could tell stories about the courtship, but eventually I realized,
That'll be in the book that we publish at the Mime Radio Memories, when we have our coffee table book later,
right,
Inside
right.
Secrets of Karen Montanaro,
Well, one of the progress from a bunhead ballet dancer. So there's a difference between being a real, authentic, beautiful ballet dancer. Like, there are so many beautiful ballet dancers, but then there are a lot of bunheads who were like me, and they just, are so stifled in their self-expression. So the process of going from a ballet dancer into someone who could share the stage with Tony was love. It was love
Mm-hmm.
in the form of mime training.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
is that part of your definition of what mime is to you? This sense
absolutely.
of spreading love?
Yes, mime
Yeah.
is love. If you look at what love really is, and I think this has to do with art too, love is an intersection of selfishness and selflessness, where you can't tell the one from the other.
Mm.
So, as an artist, and Tony was certainly like this, his highest joy, we don't even know this is our highest joy, but when we get into the mime world, where we are creating our own material, designing our own costumes, coming up with our own concepts, we know that our highest joy is to reach an audience
Yes. Yes.
and to really have, like, I know I would. Here's a prime example. Long hair, I hate it. It's a lot of work. I keep my hair long because there's one instant in one of my mime dances where I put my hair up like this, so I'm pulling my ponytail up in front of on top of my head, so that it looks like I have this funny, stupid, ugly hairdo.
You look like Gladys now, Gladys behind the counter,
Yeah, I mean it's terrible, and I'll go forward like this, like I'm a
Yeah, it's good.
model with this hairdo, and it can move. And again, it's only a matter of 3 seconds, but I hear an audience laugh. I
Mm.
Yeah.
keep my hair long the whole time for that laugh. Yeah.
People have called me a mime dancer occasionally, and I caught on to your phrase there a moment ago. I think in the art of mime, there is the dance of the mime. It's not the dance of the modern dancer or the ballet dancer, but there is this sense of time and space that has a cause and effect. And it is definitely a dance. There are plateaus, and it's the rise and fall of the physical self in a dance. And I think that's something that I try to really teach younger practitioners. Where's the dance of the clown too? These are the things that are so sophisticated but bring the true sense of love and art to the front. How do you feel about that? Because
Yes, and I think one of the reasons Tony, was attracted to me was because I was a ballet dancer.
mm-hmm.
He was really attracted to the discipline and to the physical control I had, and how quickly I could learn mime. I mean, here I am used to learning Balanchine ballets and stuff, and he taught the illusionary walk, and I got it like that.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so he was attracted to that side of what I could do, and he defined mime in a way that I don't think many mimes actually define mime in this way, as physical eloquence.
Yeah.
And I know and so for him, you had to know how to move your body and move it in a variety of ways, not just as pedestrian or something. What if you had to be a storm? What if you had to use your body to be a storm, or to be justice, or to be a concept? You had to have access to every cell in your body. in
Yeah.
order.
It's like, here we have the physical self, and here we have we'll call it the inner life, the spiritual side. So you and I both know that the great dancers of all time, like they said, Margot Fontaine wasn't exactly a great technician, but her inner life was fantastic. So she put that on top of this base of physicality, and she became a world famous dancer, right? And that's true with mimes also. There's this technical side, and clowns. If you don't find the inner life, and I would say that the best dancers do have this inner life, and the best mimes have good physicality, because the inner life tends to come forward with the more dramatic, literal presentations. So they both need each other, and I
Well,
think that's
you have just introduced my favorite thing to talk about.
Talk about it.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So this came to me after Tony died, and I started to wonder, why are the arts being removed from the schools? It was after 9/11. No Child Left Behind. All the arts were taken out of the school. I was really in financial like horror mode, because none of the work that Tony and I had used to sustain ourselves, our work in school, was. Now I'm even without Tony, and the people who hired Tony and took me because I came along, don't want to hire me, So I had this feeling like the arts are really, really terribly, terribly important now more than ever, now that we have technology. So anyway, that's a diversion. I started to look for an airtight defense of arts and education, which of course does not exist, right? But I stumbled on the Holy Grail, which is exactly what you're talking about, James. It's this pairing of polar opposite forces. And I use the metaphor of wings, that defines who we are. The twisted double helix that Watson and Crick discovered under the microscope is that same design. It's a pairing of oppositional forces, and they're twisted in paradoxes. So here, there are many, many different ways of articulating these pairs of opposite forces. Yeah. But we have a private side, and we have a public side, private, public. We do things that anybody can evaluate. Okay, you go to a mime class, you do your tug of war, and everybody can say, "Oh, that's great." But we experience things that only we can evaluate. Right? Everything about us, from our accomplishments to the color of our skin, to how high we can get our leg up, has a relative value. Mm-hmm. But we have an absolute value. And I understand that the arts integrate these two sides of ourselves so that we can fly. And without that underlying logic, without that underlying logic, the arts can be actually dangerous, as they were for me as a ballet dancer, because I got stuck in the comparative values.
Right.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And so I realize now, we do things. So here we have our tug of war, right? And people will say, "Oh, that's great," or "That's terrible," or they'll just ignore you. But we feel the rope. There's a moment in our training where, yes, we may have learned all the right steps, the physical steps, but where, oh my gosh, there's a force out there, and it's purely my private imagination.
You're exactly right. I met one of the greatest compliments I ever got was from a critic in Switzerland when I was performing years ago. And he said, "James Donlan knows what flat is." Just what flat. I mean, just flat. He knows what flat is. So you're saying the same thing. What's the spiritual value of just that form? That's what the mind brings to.
Yes.
Expo,
And I have a story, some of my favorite stories about that. And this is where I think kids need mime. Because they're like ducks to water when they see mime. Even it doesn't even have to be good mime. They love it because they are pre-verbal. Even seventh and eighth graders love mime. The break dancers love mime.
They do.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, Robert
so,
Shields told me the other day. I mean, Robert Shields, the famous
yes,
Shieldsonian. He said that he's being pestered all the time by breakdancers and hip hoppers.
yeah,
They're always calling him. We've had
that's,
long conversations about this. He's sort of like a godfather to many of them.
yeah,
It's so
Tony.
interesting. Yeah.
Gosh, all these stories are popping up.
Yeah.
I have a story about Tony. He in the '60s he went to New Orleans to perform in the black schools, and he remembers walking into the school and just seeing kind of like chaos, and kids throwing their potato chip bags on the floor, and here he is, again, this little Italian white man performing for a black audience, and he got out on stage, and he saw this bunch of kids in the front, and one of them was how they slap their elbow and like do up yours, the up your gesture.
Yeah.
He saw this kid just go like that and kept doing the up your gesture, and he did his illusionary walk. He did the De Cruz illusionary walk,
right.
and the kid who was sitting next to the up your guy slammed, as soon as he saw Tony do that, because he had not seen the illusionary walk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He slammed his elbow into the kid immediately sat up, because here's his buddy telling him not to do that. And the next thing after the show, one of the students came up to the principal and asked to follow Tony to all of his shows.
Great. So
And
now you've let me. I got this in my head here. So you're obviously very influenced by Tony Montanaro, right? Obviously, you took so much from him. So is your getting back to this? What's your definition of your art? How does your definition different than from Tony? Let's say, like, what are your introspections that you've added to the soup that is meaningful to you? Yeah.
I think Tony would be very excited about what I'm learning right now. And I think that he got very frustrated toward the end of his life because he couldn't convey what I know now, and what we all instinctively know. But we have to look at what we know. Just like I went and seriously studied that moment when Tony did his cowboy. I took that story and put it under a microscope, just the way a geneticist would put a cell under a microscope, and I dissected it. And he came up to me one time and he said, nobody has ever improvised. He was frustrated because people were always trying to do a good improvisation, and they had to come at it from the inside. And he somehow could not really convey what it means to really immerse yourself in what you're doing does to you. He would say things like that. What you're doing is not as important as what you're doing does to you.
So you would say that, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, that your definition of mime or physical theater, whatever, however you perceive it, is a discovery of true knowledge and love. I'm getting from this conversation over the last 20 minutes, I'm getting this almost scientific approach into what is true, and then with a great sensation of love around that for the human being.
So mime is like any of the art forms. It is a catalyst that really that is based on how we are all the miracle of what it means to be an individual human being. But first you have to know that miracle of the two wings, the polar opposite forces. That usually, without knowing this design element, we get divided against ourselves. So mime is, I think, one of the most, if not the most, esoteric of all art forms, because you don't.
Esoteric meaning
meaning it's very, very
Peel
hard.
back the layers. Peel back the layers.
It's very, very hard to define what mime is, because, and I would say every mime, I'm sure this is your experience too, would give you a different definition of what it is.
And when you go to teach, when you excuse me, do you hear some music? James, do you hear that music?
Oh, it's that time.
Oh yeah. I wanted to talk about.
It's time for the
Michael. Oh my goodness. What?
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
We have sent a little gift to you. I hope you received it in the mail. Oh, there it is. We would like you to open it and receive our gratitude.
Thank you. I will open it right now.
Excellent choice with the scissors.
Yes, because it's packed very well, and I don't want to break my nails.
attention to detail.
Neglected things on the planet. Oh my goodness, it's a box.
Yes, and bubble wrap.
You have to read does it have a label on it?
Yes. And I'm glad. Thank you for joining us on Mime Radio. So, please accept this gift from the Mime Museum Collection as a token of our thanks. Hosted by Karen Hoyer and James Donlin, Mike Diaz. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Diaz.
Diaz, producer and curator. MimeRadio.com.
Well, what's on the other side of the card?
Oh, the Mime Museum. Okay. Michael Diaz, curator. Souvenir 53K732. Description: a collection of quarter-baked ideas gathered up after a Tony Montanaro mime class. Wow, this is the best present I ever got. A lot. Oh, I can fit a lot of quarter-baked ideas in here.
What are quarter-baked ideas? I mean, Michael collected them, but he doesn't really know what they are, right?
Yeah, so there are ideas that you have no idea what they are. And Tony would ask people to get up. He was teaching an exercise, a brilliant exercise that he designed called rounds, and it was to unleash a creative juice in all the observers. And he would say the most important person in this exercise is the observer, not the person who gets up. So he would arrange it so that one person at a time would get up and do something. And he would say very explicitly, no mimes, no pantomimes, no stories, nothing that means anything, just a half-baked idea. He started saying half-baked. Later, he had to say quarter-baked. By the end of his life, he had to say 30-tooth-baked. Because people kept trying to do something that other people would recognize. They would always get this sort of validation from the audience that didn't know any better, God bless them, that, oh, if I can recognize it, that must be good. So I'll eat something and spit it out and, oh, that's so funny. It's not funny. It's boring. Do something that we have to interpret, that we have to see, that we have to justify in our own mind, and then the creative juices just start flowing.
So the story about your crumpled foot is a disaster story, correct? I mean, that's a event that's a product of the aging physical actor, the aging physical dancer. As we get older, we feel that we've can't maybe do things. So what would be your advice on how to conquer age as we go through? Like, what's your thinking on that? Because we all get older and our tools are our physical self. What's your thinking on that?
I for some reason, I have to tell another story about Tony. Tony is one thing, but my ability to understand Tony is another thing that I take great pride in. So toward the end of his life, he had stomach cancer, and he was very, very compromised. He had lost tons of weight. He could barely move. He looked like a cadaver. And he started to think, okay, I'm going to be leaving Karen now. Is she ready to do a solo show? You know, am I ready to leave her to the wolves? And he realized, and he started to think about my pieces, my pieces that I was going to perform as a solo performer. And one of the pieces is called The Hunter and the Tiger, in which I play all the parts. I play the hunter, and it's to music. I play the hunter, drums, 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 and then all of a sudden I become a bird, and then then I become a little animal, and then finally I'm a tiger. And at the climax, the hunter is frozen in fear while this tiger is staring him. Is the tail is moving, the tiger is crouching closer to him to leap on him and kill him. And this is kind of like a pyrotechnic mime moment where I'm standing, I'm standing as a hunter, really, nervous, and then all of a sudden I get down. Oh, I just stepped on my bubble wrap.
Oh, that's a good sound. I like that sound. Clap, chip, chip.
So I get down as the tiger, a completely different mindset. I am really a predator. All my muscles are loose and ready to spring. And then boom, I'm back to being a hunter where all my muscles are ready to die. They're clenched up and they're rock-like. And so as a 27 years old, or by now I'm 40 because Tony is about ready to die, but I'm still really quite, I can still do the Sugar Plum Fairy. So so I'm up as the tiger, I'm down as the tiger, up as the hunter. And it was just not reading. It was not reading. Tony was trying to help me with it. I was trying to do it. And then Tony finally gets up. Here he is, a cadaver. He can hardly move. And he shows me how to go from being a hunter to a tiger. Mm. And it tears streaming down my face. This is physical eloquence.
So that can spread across different dimensions. Like age has no.
It doesn't. In fact,
no part in this thing called physical eloquence that you're talking about.
Right. The only way you can get worse as a mime when you age is if you think you're getting worse. Again, here's the physical side of your art form. Here's the metaphysical side of your art form. The more you lose on the physical side, the deeper you have to go into the metaphysical side. Another story about myself is that before I met Tony, I was injured a lot. And as soon as I met Tony and I started to realize the roots of movement are in your imagination. They're in your image creating mind. My technique as a dancer shot up like a rocket. I could do things I never could do before because now I was not thinking about my body. I was thinking about joy. I was thinking about the Sugar Plum Fairy, that all these little girls there are sparkles in their eyes. They're dreaming off of this kingdom of the sweets. I am not a ballet dancer anymore.
Yeah, mime is the art of transformation. I mean, you're talking about metaphysical transformation, and that's at the root of mime. Do you teach these ideas to people? Do you do regular?
Yes, I love. I mean, some people are not ready because the metaphysical, when people are really gung ho on mastering something at the physical level, no, I'm going to take that back. I'm going in a direction that's not true. Yes, I do teach this, and sometimes it's really great. And I only want to teach the metaphysical side of movement. If I go into a ballet class and they just say, keep teaching technique, keep teaching technique, keep teaching technique, I still somehow work it in there.
You consider yourself a teaching artist or an artist teacher, if you know what I mean. That's a phrase from education, but I take it you teach substantially.
Karen, tell the story that this is about your teaching, but also about your performing, and it's about your piece you were just talking about, The Hunter and the Tiger, and how you got the kids to really latch onto it, since it's a difficult piece for young people. How you did that is such a wonderful story.
Yeah. So in my career, my solo career, I started to realize that my audience was my teacher. That and especially those kindergarten kids in the front who you know oh my gosh, they taught me so much. But anyway, on this one particular day, and I had been sort of, I had a successful show, but it wasn't what it is now. I was doing my Hunter and Tiger, and it's hard. I'm sweating. It's pyrotechnic, ballet, and mime, and dance, and all the rest. And I hear a kid in the front go, "This is boring." So here I am, like working my butt off, but my mind is completely quiet and completely absorbed in that statement. I am thinking about, this is wrong. There is something wrong here with the fact that this guy is bored. At the same time, I'm thinking, if he's bored, our feelings are always right. Nobody can question them or tell us we don't feel bored. So by the time I was done with this piece, I knew what to say. And I said to the audience very genuinely, I said, "Thank you so much for watching that. This is a really hard piece to watch. And I usually don't perform it for anybody except college audiences." And I also started a spiel that I later.
This is a high school student. This is or middle school?
No, this was a kid, fourth grader. Maybe.
Yeah, young kid. Yeah.
Young kid. But I also started talking in a way after that one performance where I put it before I do this piece, because I don't want to hear anybody saying this is boring first. So after that, every show after that, I start by saying, I'm going to do a piece that I only do for college audiences. And I have a lot of mime friends that don't want to perform for kids anymore, because they say that, the television and the PlayStations and the screens are killing the imagination, and that kids cannot watch mime anymore.
That's why mime is needed more than ever, though.
It's why it's needed more than ever.
That's
but
right.
We have to communicate, why. So I gave them this challenge. I said, so I'm going to see, I really want to see if this will work, if your imaginations are still working. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do a hunter and a tiger. And when I become a hunter, I'm going to hold a spear. And if you see me be a hunter, I want to see you hold your own spear. So you can hold it like this, or you can hold it like this. And I found kids really like this kind of precision, like it's not just hold a spear, no, this is a spear. This has value. And then I'm going to be a bird. And I'm going to be different kinds of birds. But when you see me turn into a bird, you do your own bird. That means you cross your wrists and you do this with your hands. And they see that I'm taking this very seriously. Their eyes are already going like this. Oh, this is important. Then I become a stag. All of them put their, and then I do this piece. Pin, drop, quiet. One day after I did this, I started talking, moving on to the next thing, and a little kid raised his hand. Yes? I called on him. He said, "Will you tell your friends that we have an imagination?" I said, "Absolutely. I'm going to tell all my friends to not give up on you, because you still have an imagination."
Wow. It's getting hot.
Oh, no. Look at the
hot. It's time for rapid fire.
Woo! Oh, boy.
So, Karen, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to feed you rapidly, fire them at you, some words. And you're going to respond, if you want, if you'd like, You're going to respond as quickly as you can with a one-word reaction. So this is a word association. It's not a test. This is we're looking for the truth, okay? as by Karen Montanaro, okay?
Can I use 4-letter words?
You can do anything you want. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
All right. Go as fast as you can. Feet.
2.
What?
Toe.
Arms.
Legs.
Spotlight.
Interesting.
Stage.
Scary.
Hands.
Fingernails.
Eyes.
Listening.
Fourth wall.
Scary.
Sweat.
Lovely.
Child.
Oh,
Elder.
wonderful.
Costume.
Oh boy, I'm never going to find the right one.
Props.
Juggling pins.
8 p.m.
It's time.
Mask.
Hide.
Red nose.
Rudolph.
Age.
Good.
Failure.
Golden.
Critic.
Help me.
I'll have to restudy that one. That had many different meanings. Teacher.
Okay.
Fame.
Good grief.
Language.
Tongue.
Clown.
Holly.
Mime.
Wow.
Future.
Past.
Past.
Now.
Now.
Here.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Excellent. That was wonderful.
That was wonderful. Very good.
So Karen, say you're out traveling and you sitting next to somebody in the airport and they want to know who you are. You introduce yourself. How do you describe yourself and what you do?
Yeah, well, this is a problem. It's always been a problem. I usually say I'm a dancer, and if they say, "Oh, that's nice," and don't want to hear anything more, that's enough. I'll say I'm a dancer and a mime artist. I combine the two art forms. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's very interesting. Go back to their reading.
Yeah, I used to say I'm an actor who moves, but now as an elder, I say I'm a mime. I have no apologies for that. It's like I think the younger generations need to know that we mimes are mimes.
Yes.
And that's the bottom line. Yeah.
Karen, when you say that you're a mime, do they ask what that means?
No. And this is actually one of my gripes about the digital culture is that there used to be many more really in-depth conversations on airplanes.
Yes.
And now people just don't talk.
Right.
They go into their, they put their headphones on, they go into this. If we smile at each other, that's one thing. But I used to, I would used to have conversations about what mime is on the airplane.
Well, you've traveled a lot. What is the favorite place that you have, or the most interesting place that your travels have taken you for work, when you travel for work?
Well, always for me, the most interesting place is going into a school. Yeah, each school is like going into a different universe, and the kids are different. You learn so much. I mean, it's like its own ecosystem, and I can really tell how the kids are going to be based on my first impression of the principal. Mm-hmm. If the principal never shows up, never says hi, the kids are somehow restless. I have not had a bad performance. I mean, mime is a winner. Mime will work for kids no matter what. But I will notice that kids come in restless, and sometimes I see teachers, just, like, you behave. I mean, coming into with their kids almost as if they're expecting them to be bad. And I really have to work against that, calm them down. It's okay.
I know what you said about principles is so true. I remember when we were touring with Partners in Mime, and there's this one, I still remember the principal's name was Mr. Bunish, which we thought was a great name. But when he took us on a tour of the school, he was so proud of the fact that their gymnasium was carpeted and quiet. And
Oh,
like quiet was so important to him. And that was what his students were like. They were very, very quiet, almost to the point where we had to do the opposite. We had to like really raise a ruckus with our mime show in order to get the kids to actually react.
yes. I teach a dance residency where I include mime, to get to the more reluctant boys who think they don't dance.
Mhm.
Again, that works like a charm to eat your finger for them, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, she's our friend, you know. But I teach a residency after the National Dance Institute, which is all about accessing all the kids' energy. Really, it uses the energy and it puts it. It's not dance as rocket science at all.
Mhm.
And I know that some of the teachers are very, you know, oh no, don't get the energy up. They're gonna be chaotic, and they are, at times. But I think, but they can instantly come back. That, and again, the National Dance Institute, you use sign language, you use this, and you go like this. That means to sit, and they'll sit down. They'll instantly be quiet and under control. You know, I think sign language is another form of mime that I wish all young people would learn because it is a really, really noisy culture now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we have a couple of final questions. Maybe we could just list them as like, what are you working on now? What advice do you have for young artists? And what do you think your legacy is?
Okay, what I'm working on now are I'm getting into COVID has been a great creative opportunity for me because I have this beautiful studio. I get in here, I can move. I've been working on all my old pieces. I don't know when I'll be able to get into the studio, into a theater again, but I'm going to be more ready than I've ever been. And I have a metaphysical mime dance that I'm particularly excited about. In 2008, I won a $13,000 grant with this piece because they said it's a new art form, this combination of mime and dance.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I would never do it again. But I got it out this summer. My director helped me with it, and it's completely renovated and ready to go. And I'm so excited about it. So that's what I'm doing now. Um, what was the second question?
What advice you would have for young people, young,
Yeah, for young,
young artists?
yeah, is to really respect your private life. Um, and to get into your bedroom whenever you feel like you have an emotion that you can't access. If you feel numb and you want to feel something, don't hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
There is a lot of self-mutilation going on now.
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's a downer to even mention it, but God bless these kids. They If you're on your cell phone, if you're glued to a screen, the screen does two very dangerous things. First, it overstimulates the central nervous system and it sedates the body.
Mm-hmm.
How can anybody get in touch with themselves when they are addicted to this medium?
How do
I'm
you get
feeling that right now a little bit.
yeah, how do you get kids to pull away from that and find their creative self?
This is where arts and education is the most important thing. It's not about arts. The arts are a catalyst strengthening, lengthening, and balancing their two wings. Their private inner experience and their public outer expression. These are two polar opposite sides of who we are, and we're usually divided against ourselves. The arts integrate these two sides of ourselves so that we can be ourselves. Kids should get up in front of an audience. Grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, the age of visibility. I
Mm-hmm.
don't I haven't heard this in any child psychology. This is my observation. Kids, this is the age where you go to your parents or whoever's around you, you say, watch this, look at me, look at me. You know, if you don't magnify that developmental stage, by the time kids get into 6th, 7th, 8th grade, they hide. You know, they wear their pants down. They try to look like everybody else. They're conforming rather than standing out. You know, so again, these polar opposites, we stand out, we fit in. Mm-hmm. And the more the arts teach you that the deeper you go into yourself, the more you will connect with everyone else. Mm-hmm. You know,
it sounds to me that, sorry, did I interrupt? It sounds to me that your legacy, at least from my observation, is that you're a great teacher. And I take that not only as someone in the classroom or the studio, but the great artist who teaches by the performance. You know, I think, you know, to me, your legacy is that you are a force of nature and that you have so much to offer, and that people should be disciples at your feet.
Well, my legacy, I would like to put this out there before we end this thing. I want to revolutionize the school system. And I have if anybody wants to hear what my vision of a visiting artist program and what that looks like, get in touch with me. I am more than happy to share.
Well, it's the future of our country. I mean, it's bigger than.
It's so important.
It's life itself. You know?
Yeah, it is life itself, and nobody needs it more than young people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I've read some of the things you've written and your ideas, and they do deserve to be put out there, and you do deserve the challenge of revolutionizing our.
Absolutely.
I want to do a TED Talk.
Yeah.
Oh, you should.
Absolutely.
We'll promote that on Mime Radio when it's ready.
Good. Yes.
Yeah, Karen, thanks for coming on. This has been such a fantastic conversation. Just really beautiful.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, we'll have to do a part 2 at some point.
Yes, or we'll write down all your stories and write a book, like James said.
Yeah. But, you know, one of the reasons that Karen and I thought about doing this sort of thing is that we want to archive and to get the world in touch with these fantastic artists of physical theater, mime, and clown, and who's out there. And so this knowledge can't be lost. And this is one way that we can chronicle and archive and make people have the ability for people to listen to people like yourself speak.
Thank you so much. And is this thanks to COVID that these ideas were? I'm meeting more mimes than I've ever met in my life.
Oh, yeah, it's a silver lining, isn't it? We'll have to keep the energy going beyond.
Yes.
Yeah,
we'll keep this going. And thank you so much, Karen. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you. And that was Karen Montanaro, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Mime Radio Show. Join us in 2 weeks for a conversation with Jeff Hoyle.